Hello and welcome back to the Microlearning Institute. In this tutorial we have a look at business process improvement. Firstly, let's look at the importance of process in an organization. Customers in an organization travel through the business via processes. So even though the organization may be structured into departments, when a customer engages with the organization, he or she engages with the processes of that organization. Processes are what connects the different functions or departments in a business. And these processes exist to meet customer needs. Also, processes consume resources to transform inputs into outputs to the customer. And again, we can measure the efficiency of a process by measuring the resources the processes consume in order to effectively satisfy customer requirements. Now, let's have a look at the value-added activities in a process and also the waste that can exist in a process. So if we look at a work process, we can say that some parts of that work process are normal in that they are stable and repeatable and they deliver value to the customer. But occasionally, some aspects of what happens in a work process is abnormal. We have deviations or variations in that process. Now, abnormal activities, deviations and variations, the philosophy of business process improvement suggests that we should eliminate any abnormal variations in the process. Now, when we look at the normal activities of a process, some of those activities are value added in that they bring value directly to the customer. However, some of the activities within a work process are non-value added. They have to be done perhaps, but they don't bring direct value to the customer. And of those value added activities, we want to encourage a flow of those value added activities. So ideally, we want a process to consist of normal activities, all of which bring value to the customer and they flow continuously without deviation. However, of course, within those normal activities of a process, we also have non-value added activities. Some of those non-value added activities are necessary, perhaps a compliance step or a regulatory step, but some of those non-value added activities are unnecessary, i.e. that they don't bring any particular value to the customer. So the unnecessary activities of a process, again, like the abnormal activities of the process, we in the philosophy of business process improvement want to eliminate those non-value added activities. However, we also want to take steps to reduce the activities in the process that are necessary but are not directly value adding to the process. So the philosophy of business process improvement suggests that all abnormal and non-value added activities that occur within a process are waste. And this philosophy also suggests that we should strive for process to be systematic and repeatable and consist of normal activities that focus on bringing value to the customer. Let's have a look at how we can assess the value of an activity. So a value-added activity, so a process or an activity that adds value to a product or service as judged by the customer. So again, if you're the customer of a particular process and if an activity is bringing direct value to you, then that activity is a value-added activity. However, a non-value added activity is a process or an activity within that process that neither adds value to a final product or service nor enables activities that add value. Now we can have some non-value added activities that are necessary. So these are non-value added activities. It is required for reasons other than adding value to the final product or service. So again, that can be a regulatory step or a compliance step or an authorization step. It doesn't bring direct value to the customer, but it is necessary in order to sustain the process. Non-value added activity is generally referred to as waste. Let's have a look at the sources of waste that can exist within business processes. Firstly, transportation. So a lot of movement of product or goods within a factory environment or within an office environment, that movement, it's a cost that's incurred by the business, but that movement doesn't bring value to the customer. So therefore, the movement or transportation of goods is a source of waste. And again, we should seek to eliminate or at least reduce that. Similarly, the build-up of inventory. So again, if our process steps are not aligned, we'll have a build-up of inventory between process steps. That inventory will need to be insured, it will need to be managed, it will need to be counted, and there's a risk that we might incur a write-down of inventory as a cost to the business. Again, this build-up of inventory and the corresponding costs incurred don't bring any value to the customer, so consequently are a source of waste. Also, motion, and again, like transportation, this is the movement of product or documentation or subcomponents. Again, the movement does not bring any value to the customer and again is another source of waste. Waiting, where successive steps of a process are unbalanced, so again, maybe one process step is not able to perform activities as quickly as the succeeding process step, so a lot of the resources of the succeeding process step will simply be taken up waiting for the preceding process step to complete. And that waiting is incurring costs. We've got depreciation of equipment, we've got salaries for people who are waiting, and of course those costs don't bring any value to the customer and consequently are another source of waste. Again, over-processing is another source of waste, so sign-offs or multiple sign-offs that may not be necessary and may not all bring direct value to the customer, again provide another source of waste. Similarly, overproduction, so perhaps our process is structured that we have to make units in groups of 10 or groups of 100. So if we have to make them in groups of 10, but if the customer only wants 6, then the fact that we're overproducing is a source of waste. The additional 4 are not going to be utilized by the customer, but still the customer has to incur the cost of making the additional 4. So overproduction is another source of waste. Defects, where again the process errors either caused by human error or technology error, where we have the wrong or missing information or we make physical or other logical errors. These defects have to be repaired, and again the cost of repairing them does not bring any value to the customer. And the final source of waste that we'll identify are skills, and this is where we employ or we have people within the process who are overskilled for the work that they're being asked to do as part of the process step that they're completing. So maybe we've got somebody who has a degree or who's a fully qualified engineer or accountant, but they're completing a process step which really requires a much lower level of skill. So as the customer is paying for the highly qualified individual to complete the process step, whereas a lower paid individual might be able to deliver the process step more effectively. So these sources of waste are covered by the mnemonic TIM WOODS. Okay, so TIM for transportation, inventory and motion, WOODS for waiting, over-processing, overproduction, defects and skills. Thank you very much for watching this short introduction to the concepts of business process improvement.